Trade Union Federation, Saftu, has thrown its weight behind the rights of workers in the e-hailing industry. In a statement, Saftu slams the e-hailing business model, saying in its current form, the employer uses the model to avoid responsibility for anything that happens to drivers, except raking in the profits. For more on this, we are now joined by the General Secretary of Saftu, Zwelinzima Vavi. Tata, good evening. Thank you very much for coming on.
Good evening to you, Mfokamhloli, and good evening to everybody around you and all over the country.
How are we going to resolve this issue? Because, for example, one of the more popular e-hailing services, I don't want to call names, they say we are an app, right? We are not in the transport industry. We are in the e-commerce space, right? So you come on this line and you order a ride, and we facilitate that transaction. That's really all we do. You are having issues with that, and what are your big issues there?
Well, the world is changing, and as we are saying in our statement, there is still the old agenda of accumulation of capital, the logic of pursuing maximization of profit, but now using today's instruments, the successive technological revolutions, and which are amplified to ensure that they cut time and they cut access to other inhibitors, and they have a easy movement of passengers from point A and B without you walking into the bus stop, the taxi stop, or even walking towards the train station. Everything now waits for you outside your doorstep using just an application. And that changing world demands that the trade union movement adapt or just die. And we have chosen to adapt and to chase the same old class enemy in the form of the employers who are using these new technologies to deepen the levels of exploitation of workers in South Africa. We are teaming up with the e-hailing drivers here in Gauteng and everywhere else in South Africa, and who are all coming to a hard realization that they are actually not independent contractors. They are not the employers. They are employees that are being used and they are being exploited by these e-hailing companies who don't have offices you can walk to. There is no workplace you can gather. There is no one who's going to be giving you instruction in the morning in terms of what you need to do. There's just an app and its features, and that you must use. And you must bring your own car. That's now your tools. And you must rent. You must buy your own scooter. But all they need is you to, using the application, move people and move goods from point A to point B. In the process, we believe that a growing number of thousands and thousands of workers are being sidelined and are operating outside the constitutional provisions that gives every worker a right to fair labor standards.
Yeah.
They are operating outside all of the legislative framework in our country. The Labor Relations Act do not apply the basic conditions of employment. There's no employment equity. There's no occupational health and safety. There is absolutely nothing. And so we think that there's something wrong with that, and we're happy that already we have what seemed to be a solid foundation. One of our unions, Newzroom, took a case of an e-hailing worker who had been blocked from using the application to court in Cape Town. And the CCMA made a very important ruling that no, actually, this driver is a worker, and the company employing him is the employer, and therefore the CCMA have a jurisdiction to rule over the fairness or unfairness of what is clearly his dismissal. Because these guys don't talk to you, they just block your access to this app, and you are then out of the game, you are out of employment, you don't have income, you can't support your family anymore.
So what are the basic conditions of employment that you would then be calling for here? I mean, do you want them to get benefits, medical aid, do you want them to get leave, do you want their cars to be subsidized? What would you put in as the basic conditions of employment?
Well, we want them to be recognized as employees. And in fact, on Friday, we're having a critical meeting with the Minister of Employment and Labour, where we will be putting up a case of the e-hailing workers, the taxi drivers, and the EPWP workers. All of those three groups of workers who are now in the informal sector have been operating outside the prism of our constitution. They're not being protected in any way. So that's the first thing. We want them to be recognized as employees. We want the Department of Labor to register all of the e-hailing companies, just like we are demanding that all of the taxi operators must be registered as employers in South Africa, so that the workers can make contributions to the unemployment insurance fund, to the skills development fund. They can be protected by the provisions of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. They can also be protected by other pieces of legislation as employees of those companies, so that they can bargain with them. Currently, they don't even know the faces of the people that they can talk to, because there is no office. There is just an app that you must join, and you become an operative based on whether you can afford a Toyota, a whatever form of a car. And that's all that they need. You have to pay for that car, you have to maintain that car, you must put in petrol, and every time it has a breakdown, you must be responsible for the mechanical problems that car will face. We think that that's just deep exploitation.
So how do you factor in things like minimum wage when you are dealing with what is called commissioned, I suppose, workers?
Look, there is no minimum wage. And that's why we're saying that in South Africa there is a legislation that says thou shalt earn this particular wage in an hour, and anything below that becomes illegal. Let's look at the example of one of those companies. All they do now is that they charge fees from every ride. Bolt, for example, charges a 25% on the trip that you take on. And they also charge you a further 6% for the ride. And so when you combine that 25 and 6%, you can see that they actually take 31% of every ride that you have, whether you are coming from Johannesburg to Pretoria or within Soweto or anywhere else in South Africa. Now, they take that 31, 32%, and yet you must pay for petrol, you must pay for installment of the car, you must rent the car, you must put up money for toll gates, everything is on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And that's why the e-hailing drivers go back home almost as poor as they started in the morning. And we want to put an end to that situation by ensuring that, firstly, the Department of Labor registers all of these e-hailing companies as employers in South Africa, so that the workers they employ can be protected by the Constitution as well as by the various pieces of labor legislation.
So if you were to have your way, you would want, according to basic conditions of employment, the employer, for example, to take care of the instruments of the trade. So degree of maintenance to the cars, changing of tires, and so on and so forth.
There must be a fair share between what these e-hailing companies are demanding as their profit and what the workers are expected to do with the share of their profit. As we're saying, These companies take over 30% of the profit, but they are not going to share the responsibilities to the escalating prices of petrol, the impact of interest rates on the payback of those cars, the mechanical breakdowns, there are now toll gates all over in South Africa, the high petrol or fuel prices. They're not taking responsibility. So we want a forum where there can be a discussion between the drivers and their employers, and so that there is fairness introduced in this equation. Currently, no, there's no fairness. There's totally super exploitation of all of the workers involved in the e-hailing business.
Saftu General Secretary there, Zwelinzima Vavi. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on and your intervention there tonight.